Hello and welcome to Book Lovers Companion, the podcast about books, authors, their craft and more. My name is Edith and joining me from North Carolina is indie and crime and mystery author Benjamin Bradley. Benjamin, hello and welcome to Book Lovers Companion.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for making time for our show. And like I said before we started the recording, it was quite a ride. Your book with the title What He Left Behind. And am I correct that it came out in April 2025?
Yes, just a couple months ago.
Yeah, well, really fresh out from the press. And is it also correct that this book is a standalone? Maybe?
For now, we're talking about maybe some more books in the series, but we'll see. So,
okay.
yes.
Okay. Because you have also written another series called The Shepherd and Kelly Mysteries. So far,
Yes,
there are 3 books.
3 books. I think that's going to sit at 3 books for, I don't think there's going to be any more to that, but we'll see. You never know.
Yeah, because I'm asking if What He Left Behind is a standalone because after finishing the book, I thought, there might be some potential for another one.
Yeah. There's ideas. There's a second book drafted, but we'll see if it's a good fit or not.
Yeah, well, why not? I keep my fingers crossed.
Well, thank you.
But before that, I leave it to you. What can you tell our listeners about What He Left Behind?
Yeah, so What He Left Behind is a mystery novel that is set in the mountains of North Carolina. The main character is Grace Bingham, who has lived in her small town called Oak Hill her entire life, and she has climbed the ranks to become the lead detective of a very small police force. And it's the kind of town where everybody knows each other and knows each other maybe a little too well. And on the night that she is called to a murder scene for the first time, she also learns that her long lost high school love is back in town for the first time in almost 20 years. And so she not only has to grapple with the fallout of this mystery of who this woman is that was killed and what happened to her, but also why is her boyfriend Sawyer back in town? What happened all those years ago that sent him away? And can they kind of reconcile that to work together on this? So a lot going on.
A lot going on, and you've also this past mystery in the book where you get flashbacks from about 15 years ago, shortly before Jacob left town. And like I said before we started the recording, I walked right into the trap, which we won't tell what kind of trap I walked right into. I had an inkling. I thought I had an inkling, but like I said, I walked right into the trap. Oh, yeah, there you have it.
Well, that's what it's there for. So
yeah, that's true. That's what makes it interesting. And I said, oh yes. Okay. Detective Grace Bingham. You said small town in a rural area where everybody knows each other's secrets. Or is it more like, again, people believe they know each other's secrets because they live in each other's pockets, but it turns out, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is there's 2 things. One is living around people for many years. A lot of folks can end up with kind of a fixed identity. Grace is an example where she, in a lot of ways, although she's an adult with, a very important job, is still seen and treated like the kid that she once was. There's a couple things at play. One is that in a small town like that, there's a lot of fixed identities. So Grace, who is, in her mid-30s and in a powerful job, is still seen as a young kid by some of the people that have known her whole life. And so they don't take her seriously and don't treat her with respect. and I think that's really hard. As you know, as I grew up, I became a different person, and I so it's hard to make room for that. And I think secondly, like you said, a lot of times people believe they know what's happening inside someone's brain or what they're actually like, but don't actually, just because you're in proximity to them doesn't mean you know them that well. And so I thought that was a fun element to explore in the book too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting what you said about living in a place all your life and growing up there, and people often see you as the small kid. It's the same with parents, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, not that her father, her adoptive father, sees her that way most of the time, but
No, yeah, yeah.
it can happen. Yeah, we're always the child. Yeah, makes it harder, especially when you work with your parents. Probably when you own a company or have to take over a company and so on.
Yeah, it takes different to build that trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a small town or a small village, I'm from a village. I'm not from a town, and I mean, yeah, they always think of you, like you said, as the child, and they always have this picture of you, this or have expectations of you, and put you in a box. And God forbid you should ever outgrow that box.
That's right. Yeah. No, they have one image of you, and I think that's one of the. And then even in this book, Sawyer comes back to town
Mm,
after being away for
yeah.
many years, and so he doesn't have that same treatment. Instead, he's kind of seen with a little bit of more respect, even if he didn't deserve it.
Yeah, and don't they have a certain picture of him as well? Because especially why he left town. I mean, he left town after a certain incident that
Yeah.
shook the town, that shook people in this town. Also Grace, because there was this accident and they knew the victim. And
Hmm.
I mean, people also have these ideas about him. Some people more than others. Some people think of him as the good guy. Some people think of him as maybe he's a bad apple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the very beginning of the book, they call him an outsider, as someone who's not from there, even though he is. So I think that was it's. I thought that's interesting too, to explore of the idea of insiders versus outsiders and what that means in kind of our culture too.
Interesting. You are also not originally from North Carolina, are you?
I'm not. No, I'm an outsider.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how did it work out for you? I mean, did you walk in his boots more or less? Because he's an outsider who was an insider, but you sounds crazy, but you are an outsider.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have asked me if the character of Sawyer is based on me in any way. But I think I did leave the town that I
Yeah,
grew up in. I grew up in New Jersey, up by New York City in the
yeah,
US, and
yeah.
came down. I've been in North Carolina for over 10 years now. I think a lot of ways home is kind of where you make it, and it all shakes out. But yeah, there are definitely times, there's still times people say I have an accent, and think that I don't sound like I'm from down here, and so I, feel a little judgment when that happens.
But do you feel welcome? Do you feel as a part of the community?
Yes,
Mm.
I think even in the book, when writing a book, you kind of have to lean on extremes in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
it's not manufactured, but maybe emphasized a little more than it would be.
Yeah. Interesting because you know, Austria is not that big of a country. I mean, we are about
Yeah.
what, 9 million people, and also area-wise, we are tiny
Smaller,
compared
yeah.
compared to other countries and compared to the past. But when you think about the eastern part of Austria and the western part of Austria, it's completely different. And I had one colleague. She moved for a job. She moved to the most western part of Austria, and she said, "Forget it. forget about being one of them or becoming one of them. There is, for example,
Wow.
that dialect, and being an outsider, you will always be an outsider, no matter how
Hmm.
long you've lived there. Forget it.
That's interesting. Yeah, it exists everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and um, this whole idea of small town America and this police force, because there are other elements as well. We have this community. We have the outsider element, especially in the victim of
Hmm.
the book. But we also have this element, it's a bit, I mean, you can relate to it. We have this one family
Mm.
who seems to hold all power.
Yeah.
And I say that because no matter where, I suppose, no matter where you are in a small community, there's always this one family, no matter where you are in the world, be it, I don't know, the United States, or be it the UK, or be it even in Austria. There's always this one family that holds the power, and they are the movers and the shakers,
Hmm.
and they determine who's going to be someone in the community. Is that
Yeah.
still really that true? Because I mean, I ask that because in Austria, I would say it's not completely, but mostly something of the past. Is it still true in communities like the United States, small town America?
I think it varies. I do think it's a little outdated, and that in modern times it may look a little different. I do think maybe the way that power is consolidated like that in one family, it may not be as, there's a family with a mansion on the hill that has all the money. They have all the, blah, blah, blah. Buildings are named after them. I think that now it's a little more behind the scenes where there are people that are influencing what happens in their community, but maybe not as overtly as, being this town, being this folks that are living far away, and they, this air of mystery about them. So I don't know. I think the idea originally came because I've spent a lot of time in different parts of North Carolina where I worked with folks that were homeless, that were living on the street. And in that, I learned that a lot of these centers that help fund individuals and help them get back on their feet are often coming from families that have wealth in an area. And I thought that was really interesting just to think about the power that comes inherently in that as well.
Mhm. So I suppose that's also a bit of the idea for this special family, and the idea for this center, which plays a important part in your book.
Yeah, I think even in that, it is something where some people hold a lot of respect for the family because they fund these things and they are willing to really help and lift up the folks that are in trouble in their community. But also there are others who resent that
Mm.
they have so much money that they're living not even in the city limits, but they're off in the corner and
Mhm.
they're just are doing a little thing where they're donating money for a tax break so that they can see it. And I personally think that I wanted to leave that up to the reader to kind of figure out, like, how do you feel about it? Like, are you a fan of this family, or are you like, no, I think they're trouble? But you know,
Maybe both.
yeah, both can
That
be
that
true, right?
yeah, that was my feeling about them. Like you said, on the one hand, there's this philanthropic attitude, giving back to the community. Is there a more sinister reason why they do that? Who knows? Or
Yeah,
is it really from the good of the heart? There are people who do it from the good of the heart. Um, who knows? Maybe, maybe not.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I do not want to give too much away because I went into the trap. Uh, I'm absolutely honest here, but we've also this woman, and we have Grace. Like I said before, she has an adopted father, and she herself was part, as much as I get it, part of the community, but she lost her parents, and Nat Bingham took her in, adopted her, and she also has ties to this center because she also wants to give back to these people who take care of others.
Yeah. Yeah. When she was two, her birth parents left her with that center that helps everyone, and kind of just abandoned her and said like we can't take care of her, and then disappeared. And so there's not a lot of, you know, talk about who her parents might be, what that is, because I think that it, in a way, I wanted to show that, you know, Nat, who adopts her and really does take care of her and raise her, is, you know, just as good of a fit. And I think
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, I wrote a lot of the book before I was a father myself, and now I am a father, and I have enjoyed trying to think of, you know, the witty, clever stories that Nat tells, to see if I could, you know, is that how I would, you know, teach my son something in that way? And so it's been fun to look back on it in that way too.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. And I mean, the way he behaves towards her, how he treats her, I mean, like any father of the blood. Blood is not that what's important. I think that's also what he said. It's not the blood.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, it's the people that are around you, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's been interesting to hear. I've had readers kind of talk a lot about Nat as a character, and a lot of people just appreciated kind of how he like how he kind of talked to her,
Hmm.
not really like talking down to her, but
Yeah.
instead like, you know, just like, hey, you know, you got this, you're good.
Hmm.
And I don't think that was intentional, but it still came out very organically for him.
Yeah, and it feels quite natural, to be honest. It's not. It doesn't feel staged when you read it. You get the idea that he loves her and he wants the best for her, and he has her back.
Yeah, yeah, that's all we can ask, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Support by a family, and not just and unconditional. Love someone unconditional. Don't put something in front of you and say, if you don't fulfill this condition, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He's there whether whatever her job is, whatever
yeah,
her world is, you know. I
yeah,
think that's maybe idealistic, but it's also a nice thing.
yeah. Why not? I mean, people like that
Yeah,
do exist.
yeah. Well, I think, and also without going into spoilers, like I think it's different than how Sawyer's family is,
Mm,
as well as the Dockery family, like we talked
yeah,
about. There's just, those are all blood families that
yeah,
maybe just approach things slightly differently, and
yeah,
so, you know.
yeah, yeah. True, absolutely true. And since we're talking about small town America, could be small town or village in Austria, let's not forget the busybodies. Because, like we said, there is this one family, be it still in the present, but also in the past. But there are also those busybodies. They are always there, aren't they?
Oh, that's right. They're very important people in a small town, and I mean in a big town too, but it's different in a small town.
Yes, yes, yes. And they
Yes,
know
but yeah,
everybody's business.
yeah. I mean, the very first scene of the book is Grace finds out a lot from the biggest gossip in the town, and has to kind of just groan her way through it.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of when my mother said, the people said. What did the people say? I don't care what the people say. Why are you listening to what the people say? Come
Yeah,
on.
it's hard. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people talk.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's a bit different in the big towns. I mean, there certainly are the busybodies, but they are harder to identify. They do
Yeah,
exist. I mean,
it comes on different levels. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely true. I mean, they also exist, like I said, in real life. Let's be honest here. I
yeah,
mean, it's
for
not a
sure.
fabrication of your of. your brain.
No. I definitely a real life, story behind all that. So
Yeah.
maybe someday we'll talk on that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Believe me, coming from, like I said, from a village in Austria. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Believe me, I know. Uh, Benjamin, may I ask, since I introduced you as an indie author, which is true, small press, indie author, what would you say are for you, or where for you, what are the biggest challenges working as an indie author?
Yeah, so I've the last series that I wrote was with um a pretty small indie press, and that was kind of my first introduction into publishing and writing. And I think especially on the first books, it was there's so many hats that a writer, an author has to wear to get a book from idea to publication, and then beyond to market it and promote it and things like that. This time around, so Camcat, the publisher, is a significantly bigger publisher, but still, not one of the big four publishers. And they are, yeah, it's been interesting to see kind of their distribution and their reach in that way has been really powerful. Um, but at the same time, the way that people find out about books is when people tell each other to read it and word of mouth. And so I think, the challenge is balancing um, this type of situation where, like, as an author, I don't have control over things like the list price or, how to discount something that maybe I would want to, but also getting it to as many readers as possible to really help them just talk about it with others. And so, I think all the normal challenges are there. It's been really fun. And I think what I would say the last challenge is just I definitely have the ability to write as many, if this is a series, as many books as I can or I want to for these characters. But with working with a publisher like I am right now, they have some control over that as well. And so it's, every step along the way is very different, and it's a fun ride. It's all a privilege, but yeah, it's full of different things for sure.
Mm, understandable, yeah. And how did you find your genre, writing crime and mysteries?
Yeah. I like to be very clear that I have no experience murdering anyone. So, working totally from fiction there, but, I've always been a big reader of mysteries and kind of everything, early when I was a kid, it was, a lot of like the younger adult Three Investigators, Hardy Boys. There's some big ones in the US. And then later on, kind of the classics like reading Agatha Christie and later like Harlan Coben, Michael Connolly. And I found that eventually I knew I always loved books and loved writing and reading. And for a long time, it was just, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I know how. And when I started putting pen to paper, it was just always a mystery. There was always going to be a mystery involved. And the best way I can come to explain it now is I think everything in life is a mystery. And we spend a lot of time thinking about where, what we don't know or what we don't know what's going to come next in that way. And I think that's just a really fun way to explore tension. But I will say one of my goals with this book especially was to try and weave in a little bit of a moral question along with the mystery. So I think, it's a mystery, but maybe with a heart of some other things, kind of asking questions about legacy and asking about, what it's like in a small town and all those different things that come alongside of it.
Mm. That leads me, what you just said leads me to two more questions. A, a real quick one. You said you also read Agatha Christie. I mean, who hasn't? Is that the reason why Grace's cat is called Agatha?
Sure is, yeah. Of course, right? It has to be a nod to something.
Yeah, of course, indeed. And the second one leads me to your writing process. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because it's always interesting for other authors when they listen to my chats to say, it's always interesting to learn how somebody else does it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I love to listen to how other people do it. Uh, I think it varies. I work during the day, and so I will often be writing in the morning or writing at night. And my process really is I usually start without an outline of kind of the story, but more just kind of writing in the voice that I think will become the main character, and then making space, kind of stepping back after maybe 10,000 words even, and thinking like, okay, I know who this person is, but what is this story? Where does this go? And then kind of going through that outline and then drafting. I very much, I think a lot of writers talk about it, but even with an outline, sometimes things just kind of come up, and like there's diversions that you weren't expecting that just happen as you flow through it, which is really fun. And I think that really is organic in a lot of ways with a good character. And Grace was a lot like that, in that where I there were just kind of ways that she approached certain things that I was like, oh, that actually wasn't how I thought this would go, but like, okay, we can work with that. And then after doing a first draft, I really try and put it aside for a couple weeks, which is always really hard because all you want to do is go back and fix it up and touch it. And then, yeah, it's usually a reread and then a round of edits and then kind of rinse and repeat that for a while. I get the one thing I think I've learned from others is in kind of that revising phase, one of the things that I've started to do is actually go through character by character and basically do a past. So, like, not that Agatha the cat is a big character in this, but say that she is, and that would be okay. I'm going to go in and I'm going to, in the manuscript, find every mention or every scene that Agatha is in, and just like make sure that she's a whole person or cat, and has a consistent voice and what have you, and then kind of do that once, and then come back and be like, all right, now I'm going to do Cliff and go through it again. Um, it allows me to kind of stay in that character's mind a little more, but yeah.
Mm. Okay, so character versus plot. So character comes first for you, or came first for you in this case, and then the plot.
A little bit, yeah.
Mm.
I there were the best way I can think to explain it is I was trying to figure out kind of the right character to explore some of the themes that I was
Mhm.
feeling around kind of grief and
Mm.
legacy. And so I knew that's where it would go, but I
Mhm.
didn't know, I think I didn't know it would be a female detective or a male
Okay.
detective or even a detective at all at first. It
Okay.
was just, the voice is kind of what I hope to identify first.
Mm. But I also got the impression in this book, Lace played a specific role, especially when we think about what happened in the past and how it ties into the present.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, place is a very big, important part of it. You know, the fact that it's set beside a mountain is very important, or like a mountain range, is because I think that adds some air of mystery to it,
Mhm.
and kind of connects a lot of things. And I had spent a lot of time out in the mountains of North Carolina and just wanting to write about a beautiful place like that. And so that was that came a little later, of where exactly it would be and what it would be like in that.
Mm. You get the impression of a vast space, when nature can be very unforgiving. I mean, it can also be unforgiving here in Europe, especially in the Alps. when weather changes very rapidly. But it's
Yeah.
also, in your case, I suppose it's also a bit the vastness of the place where people get lost in the woods and, well, turn up a week later and they are no longer alive because,
Yeah.
like I said, nature is unforgiving.
Yeah. I'm an avid, hiker, runner. So I spend a lot of time in nature on trails. And I think that that is one of the like last mysteries left in the world, which is just these, we don't know what happens in these very vast forests, and we never will, hopefully.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that it just adds such an element of intrigue to it as well. And I love books that take place in forests or in
Mhm.
kind of that setting in a lot of ways. I've read a lot of like Jane Harper and set in Australia, which a
Mhm.
lot of those are, take place in very distinct natural settings. And I think that adds such a strong element to the book.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, nature can be very unforgiving and it's sort of a character in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The town and the forest, and both
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of writing, and because it came up quite a few times now, what do you think about the future of writing, especially when you think of small independent publishers these days? Because there's a lot
Good question.
of question marks regarding
Yeah.
writing and being independent.
I mean, it's such an interesting time for writing and publishing. Not only with a rise of a lot of smaller publishers and also the closure of some smaller publishers, but you also have things like AI that are contributing. And in some ways, it's never been easier to publish a book. And I think that is still true. But the distribution, the channels, the all the other pieces to it are so kind of subject to what's happening in the current environment. And so I I think it's been real. I've had a really interesting journey where even now as I kind of figure out what comes next, it is like a lot more of a business question to a publisher of like how did this book sell so far? Is there interest in more? And then I think as a writer, that can be hard when you are mainly concerned about the quality of the book, right? You're in writing, you're like, I want to be as strong as possible, and you hope that's the answers all the other questions. But I think in publishing, especially the smaller ones that have to take some risks on like books and people, it's not as cut and dry where they have to be like, okay, is there a market for this? Are people really looking for small town murder mysteries right now? So I don't know. Yeah, it kind of doesn't answer your question, but I think I enjoy kind of learning more about it.
I think, like you said, there's a lot of change going on at the moment. AI is a huge question mark, I suppose, especially for authors,
Hmm.
because what are the big tech companies doing with people's work? And because there was a lot going on social media the past few months, because works have been used to feed the beast, the machine.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, not okay. And
No.
like
Yeah.
and like you said, I mean, how is it going to change the market? I mean, the small houses are closing down. They are bought up by these huge companies. Are we ending up with two major publishing houses and small
Yeah.
presses? Who knows? I mean, uh, as far as I've gathered, there are quite a few smaller presses that began working with indie authors, and they're flourishing. They have to keep the eye on the market. And like you said, as an author, you also have to wear different hats. And I would say it's the same for authors who are part of the huge publishing houses, because it's also something I have heard, because it's not like it was before. You don't have to take care of, yeah, you have to do it also as an author. not everything is done by the publisher. You also have to uh, do a little bit of legwork.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I learned in this book, kind of the promotion of it was just that that job isn't going away. You know, if you want to write books, you need to be able to talk about them and promote it. And I, on the day that this book came out, a local bookstore here held a great event and, brought almost 100 people in, and it was, it was great. And leading up to it, I was not, not that I wasn't excited, but I was very nervous about
Mm.
reading and talking in front of
Mhm.
people. I just,
Mhm.
this thing was something
Mhm.
that lived in my brain. And I got very good advice from some author friends, which was two things. One thing was just people aren't going to come to an event just to boo you. Uh, they're there to support you. You don't wouldn't go in that world. And two, this is part of the job, and like this is the cycle of it. So like
Yeah.
get up there, talk about it. And
Yeah.
what he said was read and talk about the book like you're telling your past self about this amazing thing that you achieved. And
Yeah.
that helps a
Abs-
lot. So
Yeah. Absolutely understandable. And there was also this interesting post a few weeks ago, I think, about people who write supposed reviews about books
Mhm.
which haven't even issues an advanced reader copy. So, as naive as I am, so what is going on with that? I mean, one wonders because why? And we're
I mean,
we're not
reviews
talking about
are hard.
5-star reviews, you know. We're
Yeah.
talking
Oh,
about
yeah. No.
1-star reviews here.
Yeah. Reviews are hard. And I think, like any author, um, someone once told me that reviews are for readers, not for writers. And that's great. And also, it's really hard to not read your own reviews. And so, my wife is very good about. Before the book came out, I got one that wasn't a great review, and I was unhappy. And she was like, "Stop reading these things. Like,
Yeah.
dude, it's not gonna help you, right?" And so, yeah, it's. I mean, even now, the publisher was like asking to try and up the number of reviews, and it's like, I don't know what I can do for you there.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you look at them. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest, most authors do that. Most
Yeah, we're all
authors.
human.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as a reader, yeah, yes and no. From the reader's point of view, I can understand it. I mean, like I said, yes and no, because when you read the 1-star reviews, yeah, the book was, I mean, uh, the package was not okay, or I thought it was a book about this and that. Did you read the description? I mean, come on, really, seriously? Or I mean, especially 1-star reviews with no review at all. Why? Why do that?
Yeah. I think, I, as a reader, especially, as a writer as well, I've really started to take that mindset of just, there's no thing is a bad book.
Mm,
There's things that are not for me.
yeah.
And that's okay. Like, I'm not the person to go and review a extreme sci-fi book it's because that's not the genre I usually
Mm,
like. And so
mm,
I just try to like respect that. Yeah, they worked really hard on it. I trust that,
mhm.
and not for me, but that's okay.
Yeah, understandable. And there's also the question of for you as an author, you said this whole process of after writing the first draft, going through it again and again, and um, with your first books, did you have a an editor? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I worked with an editor, and it was an indie editor, so he was
Mhm.
kind of a freelancer,
Mhm.
and it was really helpful, especially in those early manuscripts, just to
Yeah.
learn what I didn't know. And there's I think one of the biggest things in a mystery too is what happens on the page and
Mhm.
what kind of happens away from the page and then it's
Yeah.
told. And that is, you hear show versus tell so much that it took that editor to really to teach me that sometimes you just have to tell. Like that's just how to keep pace, to keep things
Yeah.
moving forward. So yeah, I really like working with editors because I think I just learned so much.
Mm, mm. And what about there's also the question I've read or heard about beta readers and advanced copy readers and so on. Did you also work with that or not at all?
Yeah, for everything that I've done so far, I've always done beta readers. And then for this What He Left Behind, I actually did, I guess you would call them a beta or alpha reader, where it was kind of before it was even really finished.
Mm-hmm.
And that was more around. I was very sensitive to the idea that I, as a male, was writing a
Mm-hmm.
female character, and there's a lot of tropes and jokes about this, about how that can be done poorly. And I definitely believe it, but I also just wanted to really get representation from young women that are around that age of the author, and just or as the narrator, and just say like, tell me what I'm way off on. And luckily, a lot of it was just like small details like clothing or hairstyles and things like that, where
Mm-hmm.
they're like, you wouldn't have done X if you were, outside in the summer. And I was like, oh, I don't have nearly enough hair to know the answer to that. So,
Neither
um,
do I. So.
right. So, but I wanted to make sure I was being representative of that. And I found that I think that that is something that I would continue to do, especially if I was writing outside of kind of my scope.
Thinking about it, like you said, getting it right, especially since you don't have enough hair to know about that, makes me think of something. When a student came to, to me, they had PE and said, "I need a hairband. It's on Miss So-and-so's desk," and I was looking at the desk and well, that looks like a hairband. What do I know about hairbands? I don't need them. So probably is that
Yeah,
one? Yes, here you go. Uh,
exactly.
yeah, what would I know? Was it especially challenging in this case because you wrote first person?
Yeah, that was new. Um, I like writing in first person, I think, more.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
I think that the interiority of it comes a little
Hmm.
natural, a little more natural.
Hmm.
But I actually, in the querying process, had multiple agents and publishers say that they didn't take first person mysteries, which I was very specific. uh, but they know their stuff. Um, so yeah, I that was a new thing, but I think that is something I'd like to do more of in the future.
Interesting. Because some people shy away from first person narration. They find it too challenging.
I it kind of came. I at one point thought about changing everything to third person when I was really, I spent about a year querying the book out
Hmm.
into the world, and was not. I got a lot of great feedback, but I wasn't getting any real traction. And that was when I was like, how do I change this to make it a little more, whatever. So
Hmm.
I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, it's definitely a different world.
I can imagine, and I think you pulled it off in a perfect way, in a perfect manner. I mean, uh, from a reader's point of view, I would say you've done nothing wrong there.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Especially since you said, I'm a male and I'm writing a female character. Don't worry.
It's the least I could do.
Well, yeah, did a great job. And did they say those publishers and agents, did they say why they don't take on first person narration? No.
No, it's just a rejection letter that
Mm,
came when I had sent things out, and that was just part of
mm.
it. It was probably a kind of a form letter of some kind, but we'll never know.
Strange, strange indeed. And as a mystery writer, Also, might also be a strange question you've probably heard before again and again. Is there anything you wouldn't write about? Because there are authors who say they write crime fiction, they write mystery, but they stay away, for example, from violence for the sake of violence, for example. If it doesn't fit the plot, why put it in there? Understandable and great. But is there anything you would say, I would never mention that. I mean, don't kill the cat, of course, because it's a no-no. But other than that.
It's funny you ask that. The main one right now is I think I would never write anything where a child is harmed or killed. Um, I'm the parent of a young child, and it's just like unimaginable, and it always was. But I think it hits on a different level. I will say the other thing that in like the thriller genre more than mystery, that I don't know if I would do is, I guess you could call it kind of violence for violence sake, but more of like, if you read a book where there's a series and the the good guy is trying to in a shootout with a bunch of criminals. I know some people love that, those 20 pages of like the back and forth. To me, I know what's going to happen at the end of that. Like that guy is okay, and maybe he'll get injured, but he's not going to die. And like, so I always just shy away from that really protracted like action scene, because I think it's not that realistic. But it's also, even at the end of a book, it's very hard because you want them to have the closure to be able to know what happened and, all that. So, but also, is it realistic to have someone confess, out of nowhere?
Yes, or you gather them in a room and tell them what happened, like Cute Plot.
Exactly.
Right? But that's not what would have fit in your book.
Exactly. Yeah. To each their own in that. So
yeah, exactly. And what I found also, what you've also done really well was the part of the relationship between Grace and Jacob. I think it's always there a little bit in the background, sometimes more, sometimes not so much, but it's not the main plot, because the main plot is the mystery, and like you said, other themes and topics of the book, and what you wanted to put in there, what you wanted to transport. But in the background, we have this relationship, the past, the present, where do we go from here? But it was not overpowering the plot itself.
Secondary, kind of almost a romance rekindling in a lot of ways. And I think even in that, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but I didn't want them just to pick up right where they left off in that way. I think, if somebody hurt you 15, 20 years ago, it's hard just to, like, oh, hey, what's up? So try to honor that.
Yeah, I think it's well done, because like you said, you can't just after 15 years say, oh yeah, let's move on or let's continue where we left off. It's not very plausible, is it? I mean,
no.
I think it was a bit easier for the male characters. It's different dynamic.
Yeah, I understood.
Which was okay. It's not no critique, but I think it's easier if you are good friends and you say, oh, okay, well, why not let your back and so on. But if it's this delicate thing between Grace and Jacob, that's different. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a different relationship. Yeah.
Different dynamic.
Yeah, for sure.
Completely. Absolutely. And Benjamin, may I ask you, what would be your advice for any other aspiring author out there?
The advice that I think every author should just consider is to some extent, drown out the noise of the kind of publishing writing industry. I mean this in the best way possible, which is that there are so many resources out there, so many people that are willing to help, trying to help writers and authors. And I think that especially early on, that's really overwhelming to people. It is there. You can read 5 different blogs about how to write 5 different ways, and it's hard to take all of that and just write. I personally was really lucky to just start writing and then figure out, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What do I need to sharpen to move forward and write more? And that's something that you're only going to get once you start doing it. I think it's just, you just got to put the pen to paper or the fingers to keyboard and start going. And then I think that some of those noise, the blogs, the other things can be really helpful. But until you put an honest effort in, it's not always that helpful.
Mm. Speaking of which, what is helpful? A writing community, your own sort of writing community, a mystery community, or just general writing community?
Yeah, I think all of it is really important to just give as well. It's really important to be able to not just participate as somewhere to show them what book you want them to buy, but I think it's really helpful just to learn from one another and support each other in that way. I was really lucky in that when I was coming out with this book, reached out to a handful of authors that I would have said are, big name authors that I never would have talked to or I didn't know, and asking them to write a blurb for this book for an unknown author. And they all said, yeah. And so people want to help each other. And in that way, like when they have their next book come out, I can't wait to shout from the mountaintops about it. Cause like that's the least I could do. I was so humbled just by how gracious and kind everyone in the writing space is. And even, things like this, everyone is so just kind and warm that everyone wants to help each other. It's not competition.
Yeah.
It is like a rising tide lifts all boats. So
yeah, true. Understandable. I've heard that a lot, to be honest.
It's real.
Yeah. And may I ask, you've touched a little bit upon that. What are your plans for the future? Can you tell us a little bit what's coming next from you?
Absolutely. So right now I'm figuring out kind of what will happen next in the world that started with What He Left Behind. So have a couple ideas of maybe turning this into a series or what that could look like. But that's to be determined. But my goal is to have a next book out sometime next year. I'm currently in the very hectic throes of young fatherhood, and so I have to do a lot of my writing while bouncing, a 5-month-old on my lap. So it's a great reason to slow down. So I'm really just trying to enjoy this as much as I can.
Understandable. Seize the day.
That's right.
It's important, especially when they're so young. They grow so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Benjamin, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
No, I just want to say thank you to you. It's been, lovely chatting with you. And I think what you're doing for authors is really important, and just appreciate all the microphone that you're bringing into the space.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on to the show, making time for me, especially as a young father. It's always a pleasure talking to indie authors and people who write wonderful books.
Oh, thank you.
Benjamin, please don't go away. Wait for me in the green room. I will be with you shortly.
Okay.
Dear listeners, I do hope you enjoyed this episode as much as my guest and I did. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I do hope you will tune in for another episode. Until next time.